Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're looking at a hunter build catered for high level content. Activities like Ultimatum, Ride of the Nine, GMs, and even raids or dungeons. This build should feel familiar, but with some recent sandbox additions, we can run around with top tier survivability and support our team with the highest debuff in the game while also dumping tons of damage. But before we get into breaking all of that down, as usual, there are timestamps down below for your convenience, as well as a dim link for you to just grab the build and go. And if you enjoy this content, a subscription would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you're a returning viewer, I would love to see you in the Discord, which is also linked down below. But now with the default YouTube channel shoutouts aside, let's actually break down the build. First things first is that we have our exotic armor, Gyrfalcon's Hauberk. This exotic perk reads, your void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible. When you are invisible and defeat a combatant while using a finisher, all of your weapons gain bonus damage, you and your nearby allies gain a reserve overshield, and improved class ability regeneration. These reserve overshields can be deployed by using a class ability. I'm gonna be honest, that's a lot, and I actually don't care about half of it. In game, we can see the main benefit of this exotic, and that's when we leave invis, we get volatile rounds for 9 seconds. This buff is amazing. It gives weapons increased lethality via volatile explosions, while also giving those weapons anti-barrier capabilities. It can honestly just be likened to a flat damage increase that also makes weapons do AoE damage. It is very good, and the main reason why we use Gyrfalcons. As for the other parts of the exotic, an invis finisher gives us plus 35% damage, but only for 6 seconds. And that overshield is a standard void overshield lasting 10 seconds. So they're not bad effects, but invis finishers are rarer than you think, and it's just a lot. Now, Gyrfalcons is the best exotic for this build, especially in future seasons and DLCs, but in a non-standard fashion. I also want to point out that you can use another exotic armor piece with this build, that being Orpheus Rigs. All you have to know right now for this exotic is that it buffs our super. But I'm not going to dive into it just yet. We'll talk about that more when we're looking at our weapons. You'll know why when we go over them. As for the other side of exotics, we have the exotic weapon of choice. For this build, that would be Choir of One. This exotic special ammo auto rifle is just kind of crazy. Its exotic perk reads, fires extended range heavy caliber projectiles at a reduced rate of fire. Deals increased precision damage when aiming down sights. This is one of those exotics that is exotic because of its ammo type primarily. In-game, ADSing gives us hit scan, fairly high damaging round, and hip firing gives us these slow-moving, very high damaging rounds, but it consumes a lot more ammo. You actually only get 5 hipfire shots in an entire mag. Another effect though is that this weapon also spawns little radial area pools on multi-kills, but that doesn't really do much for me. But now back in the menu, the other and actually big part of this exotic is its multiple catalysts. The two best being Onslaught and Destabilizing rounds. For this build, we want to use Onslaught. This is because our exotic armor gives us infinite volatile rounds, making Destabilizing rounds pretty redundant. And in-game, Onslaught allows us to beef up Choir of One's DPS massively because as we get kills, we increase our fire rate. So you can just absolutely unload on people. It's awesome and very powerful. But that's about it for Choir of One. And with our exotic armor and weapon covered, well, the build is already pretty good. The synergy between Choir of One and Gyrfalcons is kind of a no-brainer, but it is very effective. However, looking at our subclass, we can make it so much better. So starting with our abilities, the super for this build is going to be Mobius Quiver. This is generally the less popular version of Shadow Shot, but it is very important for this build, especially when we talk about damage output. Right now, what we need to know is that it gives your team a 30% debuff against whatever it hits, as well as dealing pretty good damage. Next is our class ability, and I choose to run Gambler's Dodge so that we can refund our melee when dodging near enemies. If you are particularly fond of reloading your weapons with the dodge, then Marksman's Dodge is okay. It really isn't that important. Then for our melee, we have to use Smoke Bomb. In the grenade, we are going to be using Vortex, simply because it feels the best inside of PvE to me. And then for our aspects, we have a classic Void Hunter combo. The first one is Stylish Executioner. This aspect is chosen for the synergy between it and our exotic armor. By killing void debuffed enemies, we go invisible thanks to Stylish Executioner. We can see that happening in game, as after being invisible, we cause our weapons to apply void debuff thanks to Gyrfalcons, and thus have an infinite loop of void invisibility. This is super strong for staying alive while getting reses, doing raid mechanics, etc. But then for the second aspect, we have Vanishing Step. This is chosen so that whenever we dodge, well, we go invisible. Mainly though, it's just so that we can proc Gyrfalcons on demand and start that loop that I just spoke about. And then we have our Fragments. The most important one is Echo of Starvation, which states that we get Devour when picking up orbs or void breaches. In game, we can see how powerful this is with us picking up an orb, getting back 100 HP, and then any subsequent kills refresh Devour and return another 100 HP. So all it takes is 1 kill to escape the brink of death and 2 to full heal. We also get some grenade energy on every kill, which is nice too. As for our other fragments, Echo of Persistence makes all void buffs last longer, Invis and Devour being the most common for us, Echo of Undermining so our grenades weaken, and then Echo of Remnants so our grenades last longer and are a bit more lethal. Now outside of our subclass and our exotics, we have our weapons, which are actually very important for this build. Starting with the kinetic weapon, I would recommend something with the Attrition Orbs perk. My favorite is Multi-Mock with a god roll of kinetic tremors plus Attrition Orbs. This is actually really easy to get, as you can buy it for free from Banshee right now. This weapon exists so that you can give yourself orbs to give yourself Devour via your fragments. Then our energy weapon is of course Choir of One, but if you have a different preferred exotic you wanted to use, you could swap this out for a weapon like Lotus Eater, the god roll of Repulsor Brace plus Destabilizing Rounds. Then our heavy weapon is what makes this build really good in boss and DPS encounters. The one we'll be using is Hez and Vengeance from the new Vault of Glass loot pool. The god roll here being Overflow plus Bait and Switch. The main thing you want to look out for though is just Bait and Switch, which is a damage perk, as all of the important effects come from the origin trait Time Lost Magazine, which reads, final blows with this weapon grant bonus super energy. When your super expires, this weapon's magazine size is doubled for a long duration and reloads from reserves. And you might be putting it together now, but as we saw in the beginning clip, this synergizes uniquely with Mobius Quiver to activate multiple times per super. In game, we can see that with this god roll and using our super, we can fire off 6 rockets back to back. This is a massive amount of damage as we're debuffing the enemy, dealing damage with our super, and dealing damage with our rockets. And you can dump all of your reserve ammo by then using a marksman dodge, but this is also where the previously mentioned Orpheus Riggs exotic legs comes into play. This exotic increases our Mobius Quiver shot count to 3 rather than 2. This means with 1 super, we can shoot all of our reserves without having to manually reload our rocket once. It also technically increases our super damage by 50%, since we shoot 50% more projectiles. If you're someone who likes to min-max, you could absolutely have 2 loadouts for this build. One for running that makes use of Gyrfalcons, and one for boss DPS that makes use of Orpheus Riggs. Or if you'd rather fully invest on the DPS side of things, or say doing Ultimatum Ride at the 9 with the not swap modifier, using Destabilizing Rounds to activate Status Executioner is a fine build on its own. You'll just have less uptime on volatile rounds. But whichever route you do choose, this build and combination of weapons, specifically with our heavy, is just fantastic. But of course, that's not all. We still have our armor, artifact, and the gameplay loop to discuss. First, with our armor stats, we want to prioritize resilience, mobility, and discipline in that order. Then onto our armor mods. For the helmet, we have a Void and Kinetic Siphon for orbs on weapon kills. On the arms, it's a Firepower for orbs from grenade kills, a Focusing Strike and Bolstering Detonation, so we generate some class ability energy when doing damage with either grenade or melee abilities. Chest is going to be for activity-based resists. Legs is a recuperation for instant health on orb pickup. Combined with Echo of Starvation, this is actually near full HP on every orb. An Absolution for a chunk of all ability energy on orbs, and a Solar Scavenger for more rocket ammo from each brick. And class item is Special Finisher, Powerful Attraction for picking up orbs easier, and then Proximity Ward so we're invincible when finishing things. Now, where the artifact is concerned, we actually are pretty future-proof to have this build be fantastic, since there's nothing it relies on this season. However, there are still some desirable options. First worth mentioning is Volatile Marksman. This one you can use, but it's redundant as it's mainly just giving us volatile rounds, and we don't have a shortage of that. The next one that you should be using is Maligned Harvest. This one will allow our void weapons to apply weaken after causing volatile explosions. Then the last actual important artifact perk is Limit Break. This perk will give our super plus 30% damage while we have either Devour or Void Overshield active when casting it. As you can imagine, this helps massively on the DPS side of things. Then lastly, our gameplay loop. This begins with us wanting to apply volatile rounds as quickly as possible. The best method is by dodging immediately. This will activate Gyrfalcons and give us volatile rounds when leaving invis. Once you have volatile rounds and are causing everything to explode, you should have spawned an orb which you want to pick up to start Devour. From this point on, kills will heal you, keeping you sustained, and you'll also be constantly going invisible. This will lead to you being very hard to kill. Use your grenade and melee at will. Remember, both will weaken enemies, making them susceptible to incoming damage. And definitely don't forget that Choir of One hipfire absolutely nukes things. Retain invisibility in volatile rounds until you come across whatever boss it is that you're facing. This is when you could swap to Orpheus rigs for increased DPS, but you're just going to do what I showed you earlier. If you have the God roll Hesitant Vengeance, hopefully you'll have Overflow applied by now, so you'll just want to activate Bait and Switch and shoot both of your rockets. Then Super, giving the boss a 30% debuff while also outputting good damage. And repeat that. Rockets, Super, and end with the last of your rockets. This does empty your ammo very quickly, so you'll likely then finish DPS with Choir of One. And then outside of DPS, just restart the entire loop. I should also mention you don't need to save your Super for DPS settings, especially when doing things like Grandmaster Nightfalls. It is completely valid to use your Super against champions because it's just going to destroy them. Ultimately, as I like to do, this build can be described in one sentence, and that is you'll be running around with infinite invisibility, infinite volatile rounds, and some super high burst DPS. And with that, thank you for getting this far into the video. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Again, there's a dim link down below for you to just grab if you want it. And if you want to support me, support the channel, a like, a comment, a subscription, joining the Discord goes a very long way. If you want to support me and support the channel but just can't think of a comment down below, void. And with that, as usual, I hope you are having a great day, and I hope to see you around.